Hello? Okay. Good. Right. Yeah, I do have to hold that quite close. Other than that, I could just talk really loud, but maybe that's pushing things. Right, do we want to wait for a few more people? Or?
I think we can start. Okay, welcome everybody. I'm going to start our first interview for today, and we're very lucky to have Cameron Patrick from the Statistical Consulting Centre here with us. Is anyone interested in going into consulting after research? Oh, great. Quite a few hands. That's good to see. So just to introduce Cameron a little bit, I was going to ask about your educational background and what sort of things you were researching before you went into consulting.
Sure. So I guess my background is in some ways probably going to be very familiar to you guys. I have a bachelor's degree and I have a master's degree. Did some research as part of the latter. Maybe a little bit different because I changed fields between the two. So I started out, did my bachelor's in pure maths at UWA in Perth. And much more recently, I moved to Melbourne and did a bit of change of direction. I did a master's in statistics. So actually, as part of doing that, I did like a postgrad diploma to get my sort of equivalent of a undergrad in stats before moving on to actual research in statistics. I'm very much interested in the applied side of statistics. So my research project was on, I guess, ecological stats, counting platypuses. So I was analysing a large data set collected by Melbourne Water on like capture, recapture of platypuses all around the greater Melbourne area. And able to use some relatively new mathematical techniques for that. Like it had spatial data, so GPS coordinates on these platypuses that were spotted, and using that to estimate population density of platypuses in different waterways around Melbourne.
Oh, excellent. So coming back to consulting a little bit now, it was very interesting hearing about platypuses and as well, the difference between pure maths and statistics. I don't know if many of you have a mathematics background, but it's quite a different area. So it's great to hear that you became interested in statistics. So after you'd done some research, you decided at some point to apply for the Statistical Consulting Centre. What motivated you to apply for that sort of position?
Well, I guess I always, after finishing my master's, I didn't want to go straight into the sort of expected pathway for a lot of people would be to go and do a PhD and more research in academia. I didn't feel like that was the right step for me. I wanted to do something real and applied for a while. I actually applied for jobs. A lot of jobs, as one does. The Statistical Consulting Centre at Melbourne University, I'm quite fortunate to land a position there. I was kind of already pushed in the direction of consulting. As part of my master's, did a subject on the practice of statistics, and that was essentially an applied stats course that reinforced the skills needed for consulting. So the kinds of things that we did there were mini consulting projects where we'd be given some real data. We then had to interact with the mock client, find out more about that data, because of course when you're just given something by a client, you never get the full story right away. And of course, doing an analysis, which was always the easy part, writing that up and presenting it clearly in a way that would be comprehensible to a non-statistician was something I really enjoyed. It's sort of somewhere between, I guess, education and also providing a service. Yeah.
Yeah, so you've started to touch on a little bit about what it's like consulting. Could you tell me some of the sort of things that you can expect before, during, and after a consultation from the side perspective of a consultant? So what are the sort of things you have to do to prepare, and what happens during a consultation?
So usually before a consultation, a client will send through a brief outline of what they're working on. So it's good to obviously read that and get a feel for it. But one thing that I found is that a few sentences or a couple of paragraphs rarely provides a good indication of what a consultation is actually going to be like. Um, the actual consultations can be quite unpredictable, but that's also what can make it really enjoyable. So during a consultation, it's really a matter of first of all understanding what a client's research or what their problem is about, what they've done already, and what they want you to do, because that can vary dramatically along with the client's own level of expertise. Some clients are really quite technically proficient and have a good understanding of basic statistics and just need a little bit of guidance. Other clients are at the level of, what does a mean? What is a standard deviation? Especially, I see people from all areas of research, and obviously someone in the humanities won't have had much of if you study philosophy, you don't do any maths in your undergrad. Whereas if your background is in physics or engineering, then you'll be fairly mathematically proficient on the sort of the other extreme. So it's about finding the right way to help a particular client during the consultation. Usually won't be able to solve all of the client's problems in a short consultation. So most of the work usually comes from what happens afterwards. And usually, we'll both the client and the consultant will go home with homework.
Yeah. So you mentioned some of the troubles that you might have, some of the difficulties you come across with that. What was the most unexpected challenge that you faced when you first came into consulting? Was it everything that you expected it to be, or was it a bit overwhelming at first?
It was absolutely overwhelming at first, and I've been really fortunate to have some fabulous mentors in the consulting centre who sort of helped me get up to speed fairly quickly, and been very patient with some of my initial questions, which I felt silly asking of my fellow consultants. But so a lot of the things that you might expect were to be issues in consulting have obviously turned out to be real. So time management, you might imagine, is very important for a consultant seeing a large number of clients, and that's absolutely like a massive thing that I've had to work on. Another aspect, as I've mentioned, is the diversity of clients. So people from different areas have very different statistical needs. I hadn't realized statistics was quite as massive a field as it is. Even doing my master's degree, in which I did pretty much every statistical subject that was offered in the Melbourne Uni Master's course. I've still been a lot to learn, and I still learn new aspects of statistics. But really, the biggest surprise was that what clients say they want is not always going to be what they actually want. And you've got to listen really carefully both to what clients say, but also to the things that they don't say. And sometimes it can be something that is really obvious to the client that they don't think is worth mentioning. Sometimes it can be something that is really obvious to a statistician that a client hadn't considered. And so the absences are as important as what is actually said.
Yeah, that's a really great response, actually. I agree with a lot of what you said. So in terms of the sort of skills that you've picked up, were there any particular skills that you found really valuable that you learnt in your journey to becoming a consultant?
I mean, obviously there's the technical skills, but in a way you can pick up a lot of the specific skills that you need along the way. Time management, as I've said, has been, a big challenging new one. It's very different from working on a thesis where you have one big project that you're working on every day, to go into consulting where you're working on several projects every day, all with their own deadlines that need to be juggled. But I think rather than focusing on skills, I want to talk a bit about, I guess, characteristics that I think have been important. So I think one of them is curiosity. Like, you need to, or it's really helpful if you're interested in what your clients are doing and you want to learn as well. So one of the things that I love about my job is that I get to learn a lot about all sorts of different research that's going on all around the university. Another important characteristic, I guess, is flexibility, because you can't go into a consultation sort of thinking, well, this is the advice I'm going to give to a client based on the brief summary they sent through. That just doesn't work. And you need to be willing to change your recommendations or change your approach based on the needs of the client, which will not be immediately obvious. There's a lot of, I guess, iteration in figuring that out.
Yeah. So is there any advice you would give to someone who's considering a job in consulting before they apply for the job, as well as what to expect during the job, preparing for that?
So that's a difficult one. Partly, the kinds of being a statistical consultant at a university is a bit different from being in industry. One thing that I will say, and this was actually feedback that I had from an interview at a job that I didn't get, the employer said that I was too science focused and not enough client focused. And at the time, that sort of stung a bit because, obviously, I've just done a master's degree. I'm really excited about science and stats. But of course, the clients aren't excited for the most part about stats in itself. They're excited about what the stats can do for them. Your skills are just a means to solve a problem. And it's not a way for you to show off how clever or how cool you are in your particular area of technical expertise. So that's a bit of a mindset shift from research and from academia there.
Yeah. Finally, we've been mentioning the Statistical Consulting Centre a lot. So just for anyone who was interested in their services, what sort of services do they provide for graduate researchers or anyone else at the university?
Yeah, so we provide services to postgraduate students, to university staff, and also to for much more expensive rates to people outside the university. So just quickly, show of hands, how many PhD or Masters by Research students are there here? Fair few. And I can see I recognise at least one of our clients in the room here. Yep. Hi, Guy. So if you're a graduate researcher, you're entitled to 10 free hours of statistical consultation during the course of your degree. There's a bit of a wait to get that, so and we also recommend that you come and see us pretty much as soon as you can, because if you have a project that's going to involve any statistics, can be really good to have a statistician on board to look at your experimental design and come up with an analysis plan before you put in the hard work, to maybe catch things that are easy to fix before you do. Before you do your work, rather than sort of struggle with data that doesn't quite represent what you want afterwards. So if you look up the Melbourne Statistical Consulting Platform website, we're one of the university's research platforms, you can find an online form to make an appointment to come and see us.
Yes, and they also gave a session as part of the MCRIP session in Tent 1 just before, but it will be repeated again tomorrow. So if you're interested in finding out more and speaking to some of the other consultants, feel free to visit the tent. I think it's at 1 p.m. tomorrow. Could we all thank Cameron for his attention today? It was great speaking to you, and you gave some really insightful responses. I was certainly agreeing with a lot of what you said, and I hope you find it useful as well. We do have a gift for you.
Oh, thanks.
So
thanks very much, Marianne.
Cameron again, and then we can head down for the next sessions downstairs. Thank you.
And thanks, and I hope that was helpful, everyone.